Welcome to the Folk Hogan podcast. Moses here. This is where we deep dive into all things Folk Hogan. Gonna bring you band stories and behind the scenes action, everything in between, whether it's new music or tales from when we've been out on the road together, or just chatting with the boys, doing the whole thing. So thanks for listening, and let's jump right in. Chips, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good.
Good. I'm glad. You deserve to be good. So today we're gonna jump right in. Last episode we talked a little bit about the first two tracks on this upcoming album that we're preparing for. The album doesn't have a name yet. That's why we keep just referring to it the album.
Which one?
The next one.
The good one.
Yeah. And if you had to pick a favorite of our albums that are out so far, what would your favorite
man,
be?
I like the good one. Wow. Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm off guard on. If I had to pick a favorite album up till now,
Yeah.
not including this one.
Correct.
Okay, that makes it more limited. I got a 1 and 3
Yeah.
and 2 halves. Call it 4. Based off of what merit, though?
I don't know. I didn't think deep enough into that to come up with a qualifier.
I don't know. I have.
You've been there for all of them.
I've been there for all of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, for me, it's always the latest thing that you've released, right?
Yeah.
Because it's been an evolution.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be something on that list that I was like, I really wish we hadn't released this.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to pick, I'd probably pick The Show.
Yeah.
I love The Show.
The sophomore album.
It's expansive. There's a lot to it. There's ups, there's downs, there's fast, there's slow, there's really pretty songs, there's really dissonant songs. I love that album.
Yeah.
Plus recording it was a blast. We actually, some people may not know this, but when we recorded that album, we actually went and I basically made a deal with a band teacher at a local high school in Salt Lake to let us. I would fix some of his instruments if he let us borrow his timpanis and his marimba, and I ended up doing $100 worth of work for $10,000 worth of musical gear to borrow for a week.
Which, if you're in the business of renting stuff, musical gear, you're usually looking at a 2.5% to 5% of the total cost to replace is your rental fee.
And we definitely didn't cover that.
So we got a $500 rental for a discount.
Yeah. Oh boy. So let's jump in. We're gonna break down Tree of Life, the third track on the upcoming album. The idea behind Tree of Life is the sort of imaginary tree of life that is between life and death, and the idea being that a person who has died, trying to relay a message to a person, to a baby about to be born, and telling them what to expect in life, and telling them what to look out for and what to be happy about. And this is one of those songs that sort of came to me all at once. I vividly remember writing this. I was in my shop and I was working on a guitar that happens to be, years ago you bought a Gibson ES 175 that you had for a little while.
Yeah.
I wrote this on that guitar.
Oh, man.
When I was working on that guitar before you ever bought it.
Now somebody in Germany has it.
Yeah. So I wrote that song on that guitar. I came up with the guitar part and I was like, oh, that's really neat. I like that. And immediately, one of the luxuries of my job working on instruments all day is I have that opportunity a lot of times to just stop and go, ooh, I have an idea, write it down. And in this case, we had already established the theme of the album, so it was always on my mind. And I just, the first line just kind of popped in my head. One day you'll open your eyes and see the world for the first time. And I feel like it's an interesting story. This soul that has lived an entire life and has all this knowledge that's trying to relay it to someone who has not experienced anything yet. And, wishing they could trade places, but also not wanting to trade places. Wishing that they were the baby, but also being glad that they're not the baby that's about to be born.
The old thought of, man, if I could go back.
Yeah.
But also, I don't want to go back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you give up who you are by changing things. And, I love this song, as I love all the songs on this album. But, this song sort of is one of those songs that just fell in my lap, as I talked about on the last episode. And I wrote the lyrics out fairly quickly for the first verse. Had all the music parts down. And then when we went to Spring City in 2020 and worked on it, Kenyon and I wrote the second verse and taught it to the band. And, this is really one of the first songs from this whole album that we sat down and worked on and learned.
Yeah, my first experience with this was in Spring City, and I was waking up in the morning and you were sitting at the table with your book and an acoustic guitar. And I was getting coffee and breakfast and starting to, work away the hangover from the night before or whatever we were doing that morning. Yeah. And you're like, do you think you could play this delicate guitar part? And you're picking all of these things. And I immediately remember going, until we Hulk Hogan it and speed it up and change all the chords and do this and this. And so for a while it was like this really intricate picking part. And as it evolved, it changed and grew, and the other parts came in. And when we came back to Salt Lake from Spring City months later and started working on it and building out all of the other layers, it retained a lot of those intricate parts, but it also added a whole bunch of energy into it and a whole bunch of like foundation of the drums and the bass being locked in and the banjo playing these intricate parts and the mandolin playing these intricate parts and the guitar and the mandolin for a lot of it are playing these chord progressions in synchronicity. And
and that's as you bring up, like that initial like sort of picking pattern that I had for it, that sort of ended up essentially being split between both of our instruments. So like rather than one of us playing that part, now it's kind of both of us are not playing that exact part, but sort of like having similar accents on it.
And for everybody that learned how to play guitar in the 90s on a Crate GTX, this is in drop D.
Yeah. Heavy.
We don't have a lot of... It's one of the lightest songs, but it's in a heavy tuning.
Yeah.
We don't use a ton of... Well, from my perspective, I don't use a ton of non-standard E tunings, but Cameron might answer that very differently because a banjo has a fifth string called a drone string that, depending on the key of the song, he might have to retune for several songs in a row.
And it's the song's in the guitar is in drop D, but the song is in A. And it's entirely so that like when we go to a D, you're able to get that kind of low
Chud.
Yeah, that louder, thicker low end. Yeah. Get out your old scream core,
scream
stance,
tube screaming.
Start doing your crab
metal.
walk. Yeah,
the metal zone.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this is one of those songs that it didn't take a ton of time for us to finish it up, and it was one of the first songs that we came to when we came back to the band space and started working on stuff. And I know Scott specifically loves like the ending of this song, where it gets all big and heavy.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely I adore every song on this album. It's hard for me to pick a favorite, but being that this is an older song that I think I wrote it in about 2019, the initial part of it. And it's special. It's in my heart.
Yeah, so we've been playing this live for a while.
Yeah.
We've been rehearsing it since mid to late 2020.
Yeah.
Even though we went through this cyclic panic of, can we get together for practice? Can we not? Is it safe? Do we need to wear?
Yeah.
We don't need to rehash that trauma for everybody.
But like people should know.
That was a real situation where we had, varying levels of safety and concern. And, we were sitting in our rehearsal space that for many months we paid out of pocket as a band to keep. This is just a very, very expensive storage unit because we couldn't come in or do our thing.
Yeah. I mean, just to give people an idea of what it was like for bands during that time, like, we had spent our entire lives building up and playing shows and acquiring gear and all of this stuff. And then, all of a sudden, nothing. And I realized pretty shortly on that it was the longest that I had gone without playing a show live since like 2006 or something like that. Like it had just been ages. And, we were coming to practice in mask.
Yeah.
And, man, I'll tell you what, singing with a mask on, it was not easy. So
there's muffled demos out there somewhere floating in our hard drives
somewhere
on our phones and our voice memos and things like that.
Yeah, and like to tell people the other side of it, like, over the years we had saved up a ton of money. Which, we're musicians, so a ton of money's not really that much.
A ton of money is like less than any business's operating expenses for a day.
So, but, from March of 2020 to the end of 2020, all the money we had in our bank account was completely gone. And, in our band, none of us have ever taken a penny, which people are generally pretty surprised to learn. And we try to keep it all in the band, which is what allows us to be able to, do a lot of the things that we do. So anyway, let's stop talking about that crazy
the doom and gloom period.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been crazy. What was it like for you with Tree of Life? 'Cause I know on the album you play an acoustic guitar. And I think that's the first time we've used an acoustic guitar
we could
on
go,
an album.
We could go all the way back to 2011 at the old Folk Hogan Saloon that we used to record. We used to practice in. Yeah. We did record there as well. We did our first analog demo flight training in the basement of the salon.
That was crazy.
We called the saloon for that reason. Yeah,
it was the Janica Nicole Salon. It's on 33rd South.
That's a great place to get your hair done.
Yeah, it really is.
Or start a 14-year lasting punk band.
Yeah. Yeah. The basement, there was a room down there that our drummer had his drum kit in. And so that's where we practiced. And that's where we recorded Flight Training, our first demo. And in order to record that, we recorded it on tape, which is a crazy thing to do in general. But in order for us, with all the instruments that we have, to get everything onto tape, we actually had to use 2 mixers, bussing down from one mixer to another one and then into the tape machine so that we could have some little bit of control over levels. And it was just, it was grueling, but it was a ton of fun. And there's not a lot of those Flight Training demos out there. But I think we only printed 100 of them or something like that.
Yeah, there's not a ton of those albums. It is somewhere in the depths of our website. You can go look at the previous albums and download a copy of it there for free.
Yeah.
But the reason I brought us all the way back to 2011 is early on in the band, I had to decide, when we were still formulating our sound, when we were still kind of making some decisions that led us down one path or another, I had to decide whether I was going to play acoustic guitar or electric in this band.
Yeah.
And they're the same instrument on some levels.
Yeah.
But the process of playing an acoustic instrument versus playing an electric instrument is very, very different. The way that it affects how you write, your strumming patterns, what chord voicings you're using, how you're getting your sound from your hands and your fingertips and the pick, or, even strumming with your hands, into the ears of people. People spend their entire lives developing these little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And so ultimately I chose to play electric because it's a lot more fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot easier to play electric.
Imagine your fire breather solo on acoustic.
Acoustic guitar was never really meant to be amplified.
Yeah.
And so everything that you're doing to play an acoustic guitar live is fighting the natural process of an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
You're covering up the sound hole, and the parts of the guitar that are resonating are all causing potential feedback. And so there's always this issue of being able to hear yourself playing an acoustic guitar, where an electric guitar is really just meant to do that one thing well.
Yeah.
And so you're from my viewpoint, and I play in another group where I play in a duo where I play acoustic guitar, but we're not fighting to be a punk band. We're not trying to fight the volume level of the room. We're really just amplifying acoustic instruments. But in a band like Folk Hogan, you're making, for me, it was like making the decision between using a spork for the rest of my life or using a fork for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And like a fork is really good at what it does. and a spork is not a good spoon or a good fork.
Yeah.
And so really, we used an acoustic guitar just because that's kind of what we wrote it on.
Yeah.
That's what you wrote it on, and that's what I had been learning it on. And that was a really good sound for the studio. But live, we're not going to go out of our way to create a acoustic guitar changeover or sound or whatever, because
because you'd have to change in the middle of the song. So,
which I think we could do, but it would be stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, we're not, with this album, I think we're the furthest away from what we sound like live versus what it's going to sound like in the studio.
Yeah.
Because of some little diversions like this.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And
and we're not trying to recreate those sounds live.
Yeah. Like we talked about last episode, like you double tracking all of the guitar parts. Like we're not going to hire another guitar player.
Yeah. Or there's some structural ways with guitar technology now to where you could split your guitar signal into two different amplifiers, whether that's virtually or physically having two guitar amps or whatever and getting those sounds and panning them and everything. But usually the thing that we're trying to hear over anything else in a live environment isn't the guitar. It's the vocals. We're trying to connect with people.
Yeah.
And we're starting from, what kind of music do we want to create and what kind of feelings do we want to invoke with those songs, all the way through the process of what's that going to sound like live versus on a recording.
Yeah. That's like one of the things that, it never leaves you as a musician that performs is you're constantly evolving what you're using to get your sound. I mean, we could both sit here and just rattle off all the different incarnations of things we've used on stage. And, it's something pleases you for a while and then you start doing things a little bit differently and you have to change everything up.
Yeah. One time somebody joked about us being a guitar center band, and they weren't saying because we sit down and play Smoke on the Water or
Sweet Child of Mine,
Sweet Child of Mine, or any of those like horrible guitar center riffs. But we've actually like formed our entire lives around keeping this band going. And so at one point, almost every member has worked at a guitar center.
Yeah.
Almost every, love it or hate it. Most of us did not enjoy that experience, but we've formed our lives around building and acquiring and selling and reselling and buying instruments so that we have options and things. And that cycle of gear, there's been so many things so I'm not very sentimental. If I buy a guitar, it may be gone in a week and I may have it for 15 years.
Right.
And then I may just wake up one day 15 years later and get rid of it.
Yeah.
With no second thought. It's just, for me, it's about what suits me and what I need.
Right.
And that's different for everybody. But getting back to what we were talking about, and actually recording the guitar for this. So I laid down 2 electric parts and then several layers of acoustic guitar so that we can pick and choose and switch between those in the studio so that different parts of the song will be played by different sounds of guitars.
Is this the song, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you use a 12-string in the end of this song?
No.
Or was that a different one?
That's
maybe. For some reason I was thinking it was this song. This is what happens when you record 13 songs very quickly. It can be difficult to remember it all.
Stumped.
Thankfully, between Nick, Cameron, and I, we have like 100 guitars. So
I guess we're gonna go back and listen to the end.
Yeah.
Well, this is where we'll listen to the end of this song. We've really stumped ourselves here. We'll have to move on. We'll get there in a few episodes, but it's the one with the riff in it.
Yeah.
That ends with all of the
like
riff.
Icarus. Yeah.
Is it like Icarus?
Yeah.
Okay.
With
so we'll get there next.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good segue to talk about Like Icarus. Now that we've confused ourselves between our songs.
Yeah, so as I talked about in last episode, Like Icarus is about being on stage when my voice failed and knowing that I had to do an entire 3-hour set and just try to tough it out, knowing that I couldn't hit any notes. at a certain point, I think everyone's experienced this to some level. You're so used to the tools at your disposal, and then suddenly one day, one of those tools is no longer accessible, and you find yourself in a position of like, well, I have to try to make this thing work regardless. And, being a vocalist in a band is exhausting on its own. And then, playing an instrument on top of that, it's just, it's very difficult. And as someone who's never particularly been enamored with the sound of their own singing voice, there's insecurity that comes along with that. So at this particular show, we were playing at Bar Named Sue on Highland, and in the middle of the second song, I remember looking over at our old bass player Jared, Old Scott as we like to call him, and he shot me a look after a note that I was supposed to hit that I failed miserably at, and I just I looked at him and I said, "My voice is not working." And he was like, "What are we going to do?" And I was like, "Well, we still got 3 hours to play, so we're just going to do our best." And, and I specifically just remember trying to sing certain parts and seeing people's reaction to that. And, it being a combination of them feeling bad for me, or in some cases just laughing because like it was that bad. And so I have my notebook that I wrote all of these songs in, and on one of the first pages I had written down just a bunch of ideas for songs, and one of them was specifically like about what it was like to have to go on stage repeatedly knowing that like, oh, I don't have it. I've lost it and I can't get it back. And once it gets in your head that you might not be able to do it, it becomes even harder to sing, because then you have that voice in the back of your head saying like, oh, remember last time you tried this? And when I started going through a bunch of vocal therapy, that was one of the things that I found out, was that there were certain notes that like, if they played it on a piano, I could sing that note out. But then if I tried to sing my own song, I couldn't sing that note. And
crazy.
And it was a mental thing for some of the parts. And so that song is explicitly about that. The first verse talks about what it, how I felt before all of that happened. How I felt like I could go on stage and I could do the thing and it wasn't a problem and things felt good. But at the end of that verse, it comes to a point where it says, in the van or on the stage, I finally had begun to feel my age. And that's what it was as I was getting older, I just found things harder and harder and harder to do. And then, the bridge of the song specifically talks about, the passage of time and how it affects you, and how if you're lucky, you can reach a point where you can rise above those things. And then the last several verses, there's a couple songs like this on the album. They don't have choruses, which is an odd thing to do.
It is an odd thing.
Yeah, there's several songs on this album that just don't have choruses. And the last several verses.
So what's the song structure then for this?
That's a great question.
If it's not a verse, chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, repeat, the chorus.
It's kind of verse, interlude, drum solo, bridge, verse, outro. And when the drum solo rips, by the way. Sebastian. Oh man.
He's gonna
blow your minds out.
He's gonna blow your minds.
So when it comes back from the drum solo and the bridge, where it lands is that night being on stage at Bar Named Sue, and essentially finally paying the price for all of the hardship that I had put my voice through for the previous 7 years. All of that taxing work that I had done on it, I finally had to pay for that. And that was the moment that I had to pay for that, and how painful and difficult that was to be front and center in the band, knowing that like, oh, right, this next song is going to go terribly because I'm supposed to be in this part of my range and I don't have it.
So so in a way, it's like the Greek story of Icarus.
Absolutely, yeah.
Don't Wikipedia this. Don't check me on this. He got cocky and flied too high to the sun.
Yes.
And his wings melted because they were made of wax.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is exactly that. And
so that's what it's referencing.
Yes. And that's how it felt, was to, as though like I had, a lot of it came from like getting more and more aggressive with my vocal tone over the years, and not doing it correctly and not having proper technique, and getting more and more cocky about it. And then because I wasn't doing it correctly, I damaged my voice. And then, the final verse of that song, is specifically saying like, although I fell from a great height, and landed in the ocean, that wasn't the end of me. And thankfully, through a bunch of vocal therapy and the support of my band and the people around me, I just grew gills and swam away. And the last line of the song, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's always weird to do that out of context. The last line of the song, or the last verse of the song, I didn't die that day. I grew gills and swam away. I can't be who I was, and that's how I became who I am today. And that's sort of where it fits in with the theme of the album of, the album's about an entire lifetime, so it spans everything, but specifically
and that's such a relatable, like, even though, most people won't have that exact experience, it's so relatable in the fact that as you grow and illnesses develop, you might get better from that, you might not. You might have to learn to live with a certain level of accommodation or difference. And absolutely. I mean, there was definitely a time in the band where we all sat in a room somewhere and you said, hey, there's a possibility I'm not going to be the vocalist anymore. What do you want to do? And we were like, what?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know this, but I hired someone to learn my parts, mandolin and vocals. And there was a chance I wasn't going to go on our first European tour. Elliot Goldman, a wonderful musician, I contacted him and was like, hey, look, I'm going through this vocal stuff. There's a chance that I might not be better in time for our Europe tour. And if that's the case, it doesn't make sense to pay me to go and play the mandolin parts and have someone else sing. We ought to just replace me entirely for that tour. And so, I mean, I can't even begin to explain what that felt like, because
nobody wanted that.
Yeah, because like we build our entire lives around being able to do this, and then to feel like that's just been snatched away from you, it's like losing your identity in a way. And and it very much seemed like that was going to be the case, and that's something that we all are going to experience in our lives in one way or another. I mean, a couple weeks ago, I fell out of a tree and like hurt myself pretty good. Nothing serious, but like.
But as you're falling, you're thinking, "Oh no, my mandolin playing."
But no, what's funny is that,
am I going to survive? Am I going to make it to the next show?
Like seriously, the thing that I thought about was like. Immediately after, I was like, I'm not 20. Like, this is gonna hurt for weeks, and I'm still not better.
We've had people offer us, hey, do you guys want to come play this show, and in return, our resort will pay you with ski passes or go snowboarding, and all of us are just like, no. Who's going to take that risk?
Yeah. It's, so in a lot of ways,
we're not running around like insuring our arms for millions of dollars, but we're thinking in that mindset 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have to, I work with power tools a lot at work. And every time I use a table saw, every time I use a bandsaw, I pay really close attention, because it's like, well, if I'm not paying close attention, I could lose an entire section of who I am as a person.
Yeah, I'm doing this so I can do the other thing later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what this song encapsulates. And then there's a riff at the end of this song that had been bouncing around for years.
Yeah.
And
a riff.
Yeah.
Just
and
in between while we're doing other things.
Yeah.
Or,
I remember us
10 years of Moses playing this riff.
I remember us just like jamming on this riff in like 2015. Just
we could make a song with
playing
this.
with it.
Yeah.
And this riff at one time was actually part of I Was Alive in 2005.
Oh.
And once we sat down in Spring City and started digging through all of this stuff, I think maybe I had put this riff on this song before we went down, but it might have been there that we actually moved it over to this song. But it's just a fun little riff, and it's sort of joyful, makes me feel happy. I like that riff. And it starts me and Cameron both playing that riff, guitar playing a little riff of its own, and then banjo kind of goes off and plays a variation of it. Guitar does even more of a variation. And it's fun. That song is fun. And it's a song that I feel like at some point it's been everyone's favorite. There's definitely been a time where everyone in this band was like, yeah, that's my favorite song to play right now.
Yeah.
Because it's so much fun.
It is fun.
And I mean, even just the middle of it, having a moment to be able to just sit back and watch what Sebastian is doing, it's like, that man, I could watch that all day.
So
I'd buy tickets for that.
We were bouncing around. Did you play this guitar on this song or this song? And we finally got to the road that led us to. It was the end of this song, recording the guitar parts, that we busted out this 12-string.
Was it so
electric?
It was this? Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna listen to a little bit of the song leading into that breakdown, and this will change as we mix this a little bit further. You're getting to hear what all of the musicians in the band have heard now a few times.
Yeah.
And we're still working on mixing and then eventually mastering. And then we're going to be putting this out in April of 2025. So way, way early preview of this song. And so let's listen to it now. Wow. Yeah. So there it is.
One thing I would love to talk about real quick.
I don't think there was a 12 string in there.
I think there is. I know
Okay.
you played it there. So
I could tell.
One thing I do want to touch on there is that last line. That's how I became who I am today. The song about losing that tool and then growing from that. Singing that line 3 times in a row, and with it being about my voice, singing it at the level that it's at, and then kicking it up and singing it at a higher point, and then kicking it up and singing it at a higher point, was just like an extremely cathartic thing to sing this song about this thing and do this thing with my voice that I felt like I could do it one time, but I wasn't doing properly. And then I damaged my voice, and then growing to this new place and finding a different way to do things and being able to accomplish more still.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because, where we cut into the song right there is where you are absolutely like belting, screaming, which is a little bit weird thing to hear after like, oh yeah, so I damaged my voice. I have to be really careful with it. Anyways, I don't know what caused it. It's a little there's a little bit of confusion there.
I mean, there's
that all together.
There's a healthy way to do it, and for years I was not doing it in a healthy way, and sometimes I still don't do it in a healthy way, and that's part of the magic of being in the studio is you can kind of take some chances and do things a little bit differently. This is not that different from how I do it live, but I was able to throw a little bit more behind it. But the cathartic release that comes from it, I mean, I had tears in my eyes singing that because it was a huge deal for me. And I remember the first time we played it live, similar thing. Like I had tears in my eyes, just like, whoa, I can't believe that I came back from all of that. And I'm still able to come out and do it, because there was a good period of time where it was like, I might be done with being in a band as far as being a singer, because like I might not be able to come back from this. So it's extremely cathartic. And then, after that, going into that sort of heavier part, what the bass is doing, just playing that wonderful melodic line, Sebastian on the double kick pedal, like getting that sort of super energy of like, it really encapsulates how it feels to be able to come back, and then to have it come down to this very nice, soft, melodic, flowing section, and be able to just kind of sit in a groove there and feel comfortable. It really is, it really encapsulates what that entire experience was like.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good times.
I mean, in speaking about going to therapy and getting help,
oh boy,
we've got a sponsor of the day, Header Belp. Are you feeling like life's got you in a chokehold and you're spiraling faster than our set list at a dive bar? You might need Header Belp. It's like a therapist in your pocket, only without the annoying waiting room music. You can chat with them from anywhere, even while you're stuck in traffic in your busted tour van.
And we got that. We've got that covered.
Or while you're driving the van. Head over to headerbelp.com/folkhogan. Use coupon code folkhogan and get your brain all sorted out before it starts riffing off key. Because mental health, that's more punk rock than smashing your guitar on stage.
Or your voice, or your head. Yeah.
Bitter Yelp. You better yell.
Yeah.
Find us at Better Yell.
Yeah.
Email Better Yelp. A Better Yelp.
Oh man, I wish there was a better Yelp.
It's like Yelp when it was Urban Spoon.
Ooh, back when it was good.
They had that sort feature that you could just, and that was the end of many marital or post or premarital arguments
over dinner. Yeah.
What are we going to eat?
Right.
let's find out what the spoon says.
The age-old question.
Now we just have to take a physical spoon and spin it in the direction of a restaurant, pull up Google Maps, see where the spoon landed, and go in that direction.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good method. And if that helps you get out of an argument, then go buy yourself a patch or something on folkhogan.com. So we've talked about songs 2 and 3, 3 and 4.
Yeah.
3 and 4 on this next album. We've talked about Tree of Life, and we have talked about Like Icarus.
Yeah.
And in the next episode, we're going to be talking about, you guessed it, the next songs.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we have a show coming up. We're going to talk about it again.
Yeah, Slim Cessna's Auto Club. We're finally opening for them October 16th at Metro Music Hall. Man, it's going to be a real good time. I'm so excited to finally play with them.
And you can always figure out what shows we have upcoming on folkhogan.com/shows. Or you just go right there to the homepage. Or, we're on a lot of social media outlets. You could find us on MySpace. You could find us on your Friendster account. You could just text us if you have, a lot of musicians don't want to talk about this, but the best thing that you can do the day of a show is text a musician and ask them things like, hey, where do I park? What time does the show start? When are you going to play? Because I don't want to see anyone else.
They love that. We love that.
We love it.
Trust us.
So much. Well, we'll act a little aloof, like, don't, that's why we put all the information out there so you're not texting us, but we love it. We love that sense of
control.
Control.
Yeah. It really is just control over where you're parking your car, so that we can put a tracking device on it, and then we'll have a place to sleep.
Well, this has been episode 2. We'll see you out there in the pit.
I love you. Bye.